Hi, Steve Gamache here with a Chef Knives to Go quick look product video on the Moritaka AS Aogami Super Supreme Series KS style Gyuto 250mm. So this knife is patterned after the Masamoto KS style of blade shape. The core steel on this is Aogami or Blue Paper Super carbon steel. The heat treat rating is about 64 to 65 Rockwell, and that's at the high end of the hardness range for Aogami Super. And this core steel is really nice combination of long edge retention and high hardness and steep edge taking abilities with pretty easy sharpening characteristics as well. So it's a really nice core carbon steel. The construction is iron cladding, reactive cladding with a Kudauchi or blacksmith, what we call KU finish, over the top of that core steel. And Moritaka has what I consider one of the nicer KU or Kudauchi finishes of all the lines that Mark carries. It's got a nice, pretty smooth characteristic to it that has a good combination of low friction and reasonable non-stick characteristics to it. So it's just a nice looking KU finish. And you've got some embossed kanji on the knife. This line of knives has a handle tang area that's get the light just right here. That's a stainless steel, so the tang is welded onto the blade, and which goes in the handle is stainless steel for longevity on the handle. The line with the cladding core steel is very difficult to see on this line of knives. It's hard to see almost with the naked eye unless you get the lighting just absolutely perfect, but it is there. The weight on the knife is 182 grams, or about 6.4 ounces, and the blade length is slightly over 250 at almost 10-inch blade. And these will vary a little bit dimensionally by knife since they are all handmade. The overall length is around 16 inches for the entire knife. And the spine above the heel chin point is about 3.9 on my example, right above there. And then it tapers down from there. And these have a nice characteristic of just being a gentle distal taper all the way down the blade. And then as you get to the grind, of course, it thins out dramatically to the very tip. And the height on this blade is 47.8 at the spine to chin heel area. The handle type is an octagonal U-wood handle with a buffalo horn ferrule. And lest anyone thinks that Mark gives me cherry-picked knives, he does not. I most assuredly can tell you that. So this particular one has a crack in the ferrule. So Mark does not cherry-pick the knives from me. He yanks them off the shelf, and I get what everybody else would normally get. So this one will need a rehandle, but anyway, sometimes that can happen, and of course Mark is wonderful in customer service at handling any defects like that. So this is an ambidextrous handle, and the handle does have a little bit of a raised difference between the wood, and the wood's a little taller right here than the buffalo horn ferrule. You could sand that down if you wanted to. It's not enough for me to make any real difference feeling the handle. I think it feels just fine, but if that's an issue with you, you could sand it down. The handle circumference is slightly over kind of a standard 3-inch type handle, so it's about 3 1/8 inches circumference, which I measure right here at the ferrule wood junction. Feels great on this blade. You've got this particular one has a nice gap here for the neck where the spine back part, shouldn't say spine, but the back part, the choil of the blade goes in the neck, and you've got a nice area there for a finger to go in for a pinch grip. And this gives you a lot of nice height, effective height on the blade for clearance on the board. So it's a nice characteristic. The knife is ground very, very nicely, and it has a kind of a classic KS type profile. It's got a pretty long flat spot towards the heel and a gentle curve towards the tip with a bit of belly as you get towards the tip. Overall, a flat profile. It's pretty thin at the edge the way they grind these. They do a nice job grinding these. And while it's not going to be the most laser type knife going through product, it's thin enough at the tip where it performs nicely on things like onions, and it has a good combination of not too much wedging on ingredients. It'll have a little bit because it's a little bit thicker knife, but not much at all. And also fairly good non-stick properties as well. So I think they've done a nice job of balancing the characteristics to make a good overall performer out of this knife. So this knife is pretty stiff. It's got that nice pointed tip on it, almost a Funiyuki style tip to it. And it's thin enough to do some detail work if you need it on smaller ingredients like shallots. If you want to do that, you could. You get a little bit of lift on horizontal cuts, for instance, on onions, but it's not a super skinny blade like the Ikeda KS AS blade is very, very thin blade. It's much more flexible. It's just a completely different style blade than this. Let's try my new feature and see about getting you a view of what this looks like on a cutting board. So here's the profile of the blade. Hopefully you can see the white paper or the ivory paper behind that. And so it's not a complete dead stop. The 240 regular Gyuto had a little more of a dead stop at the heel. This one has a little bit of relief at the heel, but fairly flat type profile, and then a fair amount of curve, gentle curve towards the tip. So you can do some rocking with it. It's fairly flat overall profile. Get some height out of it if you need to do that. So it's just a good all-around performing blade. Out of the box sharpness, I'll give these about a 5 out of 10. It was pretty sharp out of the box. You could get it much sharper if you know how to use sharpening stones. I threw it on the Sharpening Pro 1.5K stone very, very briefly, and then touched it up, stropped it just a little bit on horse butt leather, and got really nicely sharp with a good bit of tooth on it for really going through ingredients. But this AS steel will take a nice deep edge and take a lot of refinement, no problem. So you can use this thing just crazy sharp if you needed to do that. And so balance point, I don't know if I went through that. Balance point is right about there, a little in front of a pinch grip, not too much. So it got a slight blade heavy bias to it for some cutting power, but just an all-around real nice version of a KS style blade. So the Moritaka Aogami Super Supreme KS style Gyuto 250mm knife.